Welcome to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Today we're going to be talking to Marlo Anderson, who just spent a good solid week down in Las Vegas, maybe a little bit more than that, one of the largest tech shows in the world. And as many of you recall, last year, Marlo brought us many segments related to various emerging technologies that came out of the show. And he did that again. So we're going to be having a bunch of segments over the next few months related to the conference. But Marlo's got a lot of different backgrounds. He's got a show, a tech guru, and he's also National Day Calendar. So we want to talk about all of those little things because some of you maybe don't know Marlo. So Marlo, welcome to Open Range.
Thanks, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
Marlo, before we get started, a lot of people know you already. You're pretty infamous, if you will, but some people don't. So tell us a little bit about yourself and before we dig into the subjects at hand.
Yeah, I'm a North Dakota native. I grew up and graduated from Des Lacs, North Dakota. If you're familiar with that, it's about 15 miles outside of Minot. And so small town life, I've always been excited about what we can do with our rural communities, and I love living here. I'm asked this all the time, Gary, why is it that you don't move someplace else, especially with National Day Calendar? And it is a quality of life thing. I travel all over the country and a little around the world, and there really isn't, in my opinion, a safer place and a place that I can just go have coffee in the morning and visit with people. That the experience is very unique here in North Dakota, so that's why I stay. And but yes, National Day Calendar, I'm the founder of that. We just turned 13 years old, and I know a lot of people think that we've been around a lot longer than that, but it's just 13 years. And National Day Calendar is the biggest trending topic of all time. We have a reach many days of over 1 billion people. That all goes or comes out of Mandan, North Dakota. And then on top of that, I host a lot of radio, television, tech type of things. We have a show called The National Day that is being heard probably by the end of this year on between 350 and 400 stations across the country. That just got picked up for syndication, so we're very excited about that. So a lot of things going on, Gary. And then on top of that, this was my 24th year of covering CES. And this year was not unlike any others. It was exciting, and this infusion of artificial intelligence into robotics is really, to me, the thing that probably emerged most out of CES this year.
So we're going to dig into the technology side of it, Marlo, but let's take it to National Day Calendar. That's fascinating when you talk about the volume of people that are those web hits when you refer to it? And then talk about when you do some video around that, what that all means for the average viewer out there.
Yeah, so it's reach, Gary, it's a great question, by the way. I don't think people really understand what reach means. And it's not just the number of people that go to your website. It would be when we say we're the number one trending topic on all time. So when you go on social media and you see it's National Siblings Day, when you are driving to work in the morning and you hear it's National Popcorn Day on the radio, when you're watching your morning news before you head off for the day and you hear that it's Squirrel Awareness Day, that is reach. So reach is eyeballs, and reach could be that maybe you hear it 3 or 4 times in a day. That's counted 3 or 4 times. But it's also heard in Australia and England and India and all over the world. But that's what reach is. It isn't that we have all those people coming to our website. It's that reach that goes out in multiple types of media, whether it's television, radio, social media, podcasts, newspapers, whatever it would be.
So when you say of all time, what does that mean? Help me get my mind around that.
Trending topics in there's any time. Our president, of course, right now is a trending topic as well. When you think about national days, it isn't just like it's one time a year. We're the number one trending topic almost every day. We have the number one trending topic over 400 times a year, which means that even on some days, we will actually fight for the number one and number two spot. Back in the days when we actually kept track of these things, sometimes, like Squirrel Awareness Day would be number one and Bobblehead Day would be number two, and then they would swap or whatever. So that's how that works. You can have a number of number one trending topics in a particular day, just depending on what's going on in the world, because they will take each other's place. But on a particular day, you might have 10 or 20 of them. Bobblehead Day, for example, which is January 7th, I believe, or maybe it's January 8th, somewhere in that neighborhood, just a few weeks ago. And that actually trended number one for about 2 days. So it always amazes me how that one particular National Day trends, but it's because all of these baseball teams will bring out, like the Twins, for example, will bring out the 1987 World Series team in bobbleheads, and they'll take a photo of that and push it out there. And of course, everybody who loves the Twins reposts that and shares it and comments and whatever. Imagine every Major League Baseball team doing that over a course of a couple of days. So the reach is very significant when things like that happen.
Marlo, talk to me about it. I hope you've been able to monetize that. Talk to us a little bit about what that means when you say monetize it, but just because people click on something or be aware of it, to do what you've done is quite remarkable from Mandan, North Dakota.
Yeah, it's not easy to monetize these things.
I see.
Reach is one thing. You actually have to. I've never been a big fan of, I shouldn't say a big fan. I'm becoming less of a fan of social media as we go along, quite frankly, even though we are the kings of social media, but never really figured out a way to monetize that. So I didn't spend a lot of time with that. I actually wanted to drive people to our website, and then they would share from there. And that you can monetize, right? You can monetize that with advertising that goes on your website. We have some products, we have a calendar and some shirts, like what I'm wearing here. Celebrate Every Day is our logo, or our slogan, I should say. And a very powerful slogan. And a lot of people will pick up our t-shirts and that type of thing. So that's how you monetize those things. And of course, with the popularity of National Day Calendar, we do a lot of appearances. We are now allowing brands to become the official product for national days. For example, a North Dakota company, Grubber Spuds, by the way, we deemed them the official popcorn for National Popcorn Day just a couple days ago. So they actually get a seal that they put on all their bags and all of this stuff that deems them the official popcorn for National Popcorn Day. So these are the types of things that we can do that help us monetize and get the word out as well.
So what I'm thinking about is I still do some consulting, working with the burrito company. I started the green chili food company. We do these
Yes,
green chili burritos. So I guess I imagine there's a National Burrito Day, right?
there is a
So,
National Burrito Day. Yeah, very
so,
popular, by
so,
the way.
so we probably should see what I can do to get that done if nobody else has stepped up and done it. So that's what you figure out. So we negotiate with you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so you would visit with us. Of course, we have a quality standard, so you better be bringing me a
Oh,
quality burrito.
hands
Uh,
down,
all
hands
right,
down.
perfect. And if you pass our litmus test and you're interested in becoming the official burrito for National Burrito Day, we can certainly have a talk about that.
That
Absolutely.
sounds fascinating. I just think that's fascinating of the whole concept of a. So let's just dig in that a little bit further. So who establishes today's the National Burrito Day versus or the Bobblehead Day? Who drives that?
So we drive that. So what happened is when I first started the National Day calendar, it was a hobby, and it turned into a business. It wasn't designed to become a business, but it became one because of the popularity of it. And what happened is that I was really fascinated with the 25, 30 national days that were out there right now. Popcorn Day was one of them. Coffee Day was another one. Donut Day. Well, there's a couple of those that were pretty popular at that time, but there was nothing out there about them. Where do these days come from? So I started a blog called National Day Calendar, and the media almost immediately started to follow what I was doing. They were very interested in these backstories about where these days came from. And then as I started to dig into it, I found that there were days that were declared in 1796 and 1832 by Congress. Hallmark had declared a few over the years. Other companies did as well, but a lot of them were congressional or presidential declarations that had been forgotten. And so this crazy guy in Mandan, North Dakota, started to write about these things, and then they became part of basically our culture in the United States. And that was the elevation. By the time I was done with that research, it took 2.5 years. I was, we were 1,200 deep into national days that had been forgotten, and that was basically the rise of National Day.
I think it's fascinating that you don't turn the radio on or something where they don't discuss it's a national day, whether it's your grandparents' day or grandkids' day, and I always kind of say, I think the greeting card company or the flower shops are behind it. So I always find that fascinating to see what's behind it. So Marlo, Just before the break, I was thinking we should bring up the website. There's probably people out there and say, "Oh, what if I want to buy a calendar and get one of those cool shirts you got on?" How do people find out about it?
Yeah, you just go to nationaldaycalendar.com, just like it sounds, and you will see a listing of all the national days throughout the year. And I guess I can actually share this with you. We have a total rebranding of the website that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. We are very excited about what we're going to be bringing to the world with the new websites. But go there now. It's totally functional right now. But just know that if you go there in a couple of weeks, it's going to be totally different because National Day Radio will be available on there, so you can listen to that. We will have amazing contests. We have a contest that we're developing called One in a Million, where you pick a number between 1 and 1 million, and it'll be and the prizes will be based around national days. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. The brand might not be there, but for example, 4x4 Day, it's very possible that we'd give away a Jeep on National 4x4 Day. Those are the type of contests that we're going to be doing in the very near future, simply by just guessing a number. So we're very excited about some of these things that we'll be bringing to the world.
That's fantastic. When you just think about it, I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, maybe we need to incorporate a little bit of that every day in the show, Luke, back there in production. When we begin to think about it, I could open up and say, by the way, here's what's going on today. They do it on the radio. I guess we could do a lot to promote that as well, Marlo. So maybe we'll have to talk through that a little bit.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that'd be a great thing to do. And so I'm going to pivot a little bit to being a tech guru that you are, and I guess you do various podcasts and shows related to it. And let's bring up that website a little bit and make sure I get the terminology correct, because maybe tech guru isn't exactly, as far as I'm concerned, you are a tech guru. So talk to us a little bit about the Tech Ranch.
Yeah, so the Tech Ranch was a radio show. I guess we'll be bringing it back here in a little bit. I got a little busy last year, so I had to put the Tech Ranch, the radio show, on hiatus for a little bit. But the website still is live, and we still talk about a lot of different things in the tech world. You'll see a lot of things about CES, which we're going to get into in a little bit, expanded interviews and that type of thing that will be on the Tech Ranch. And that Gary really has availed me probably more than anything else to this ability, as the host of a show, this ability to get in front of people that you probably wouldn't normally get in front of and visit with them about their inventions, about their view of the world, all of these things, which probably has given me a pretty interesting perspective on the evolution of technology in the last couple decades and where things are going. And if you watch, I did a TED Talk 7 or 8 years ago here in Bismarck about where tech was headed to. And if you watch that right now, I haven't watched it for a while, but if you go and find it on YouTube, for example, you'd be stunned, I think, at how many of the things that I talked about in there are actually starting to come to reality. So we're at a very exciting time. And for a lot of people, I'm sure it's one of those times that you might be a little concerned about, especially with AI and robotics and the loss of jobs. And I hope that we get some time today to talk about that, because I think I can alleviate some of those fears that people might have about that as well.
Marlo, this is really where I want to go with AI. Let's just go right there now, because
Okay.
I'm a big fan of what AI can do and what it can do for productivity. And I see the abuses that can come with it. I think I saw one of the top songs in America was done by an AI tool to write a song fake with fake. And it's shocking what the power of that is. And so if I was not thinking about being an old guy retiring in the near future, being on Social Security, which I am, but at the same time, starting something new, it would be around AI and about the tools, whether it's robotics or UAVs and all those kind of things that are part of that. Talk to us. So talk to us what you saw at the conference, and also a little bit about the vision you had early on, going back 6, 7 years ago, and the implications of that.
Yeah, let's talk about the music thing to start with. I think that's a great example. I wonder how people thought about the invention of electricity back in, and we started lighting things up, and the ability to watch live music in a hall at the turn of the 20th century, right? I just think about that. And then, of course, electric guitars. I bet if we went back and looked at articles, there were probably all kinds of musicians at the day that thought that putting an amplifier on a guitar was the worst thing that could have possibly happened. And then, of course, we started recording music. So those live performers were like, why would you even need to listen to us live anymore? Because you can listen to anything that we do that's recorded, and so on. And somehow or another, we seem to adapt. I remember when the MP3 came out, and all these artists were all upset about that revenue from records and stuff would disappear. That's probably true, but I think the revenue that they get now from like YouTube streams, I look at like Billie Eilish, for example, some of these songs that they put on YouTube get billions of views, and it's a way for them to recoup some of that revenue. And quite frankly, I think concerts are bigger than they've ever been. So people are willing to pay significant money to go to these things nowadays. I'm just using that as one example of technology that has changed over time. And somehow or another, it still ends up just fine. In fact, most of the time, better.
Marlo, I have to tell a story. I was hosting KFYR Cafe for Daryl Lease maybe a month ago, and they had this bumper music that came on. I said, that's a pretty cool song. Where'd that come from? They said Dustin Goverlaw, he's on KFYR Cafe regularly, and regularly I have as a guest on Open Range. He said he wrote this app. We use this app and wrote this bumper song for Daryl. That's what Daryl uses. So I go, really? So I text Dustin and I said, hey, what's that app? And so he sent it to me, and literally within 3 minutes, I got the background on it, got the text, downloaded the app on my phone, said, I should do one for Open Range. So I literally said, like it to be country music. I like to talk about the Badlands. And I had a song like 2 minutes later. And I was going like, I don't think this is a number one hit or anything, but it was amazing how good it was. And I go back to the old days of putting the jingle together that you'd put into an ad and the complications of it and the cost. And I'm thinking all these people are going to be out of jobs that write jingles. It maybe accelerates and gives us more opportunity to do something with those jingles, correct?
Yeah, I think that is true. I think it just allows that creativity to flourish even more. And as a result, you have this ability. That's something that maybe you would never even dream of doing, right? But because you have the ability to do it now, you have your own jingle for like your podcast or your radio show or whatever that maybe you couldn't afford to do before. I don't think it puts people out of work. I just think it gives them more opportunity.
I think the challenges of socially that are impact. This last year, I watched a Bob Dylan movie about when he went from acoustic to playing electric, and it just turned into a crazy. People just went nuts over it, and it was boycotting. And it's these cultural evolutions that occur with technology that's rapidly changing the way we live. And so, when you think of that, what are some things that you saw that you think have implications that people are going to get pretty nervous over?
Yeah, I think of course, AI and robotics are probably the biggest thing, right? There's no doubt that attorneys, accountants, their life is changing right in front of their eyes. And it's because AI can do a lot of these things for them, or for you and I, for example, right? This ability to just file your taxes online, and you put in your W-2, you answer a few questions, and the AI goes through it for you. I'm just using that as one example. Taxes are on top of mind for a lot of people right now. And this allows you to get that done relatively quickly and easy, and you're on your way. However, I know that accountants and all those, they seem to be busier than ever. And I think it's these AI can't dive into the uniqueness of your situation. If you're a farmer or a rancher, you're really a lot different than what I am as an entrepreneur in Mandan, North Dakota. I can't imagine that AI could ever do all of my taxes. I need to have advice from somebody, and that's the value of having that accountant or having that lawyer. But I'll just use this as an example. As an ability to protect my business, signing NDAs or getting an NDA drafted by my attorney so I could visit with somebody, a non-disclosure agreement, for those of you who might not know what an NDA is. And to have one drawn up by an attorney, you might get charged an hour of time. That could be anywhere from $400 to $600 around here. So you have to make this decision. Is it worth me spending $600 to get an NDA so that I can have a conversation with somebody? So this allows you to actually, you can drop into ChatGPT, say, hey, I need an NDA created for this particular conversation I'm going to have. And then I have the people sign that around there. I would never spend all the money that I would spend on NDAs that I get done now because I have AI. So I'm just using that, and it protects my business better because I have that.
You know, Marlo, I just think of a friend of mine whose wife's got some health issues, and she's been going through using Chat GPT to ask questions about her symptoms. And it's shocking on how accurate it was, which is much more advanced than just a Google search, right? And so when you begin to have the interaction, I wrote a business plan for an idea that I had in 2 hours that would have taken me 6 weeks to get it accurate. And I had spreadsheets and slide decks. And so there is things that can time the market, change everything. So Marlo, you did all these interviews at the CES conference in Las Vegas. I know you just got back. Actually, earlier segment, you talked about hosting shows or doing stuff, the opportunities you get to meet people and talk to people and see things. And it's ironic when you're saying that was going through my mind. I'm down here in Phoenix, and I went and had lunch yesterday with Charlie Army, who I did 6 hours with him, lives in Sun City. He was a scout in the NFL for 4 or 5 teams. He general manager for the Rams when they won the St. Louis Rams won the Super Bowl in 2000. We just went out and had lunch, and I would have never met this gentleman if I wouldn't have done this show. And you get exposed to people and things by just being out in the world doing it. And that's exactly what you just came from in Vegas. Is similar but different, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're right. That's probably why I stay in this media space just a little bit, because to me it's about this collision of opportunity that I get because I get to meet these amazing people, and I get a glimpse into the future a little bit, I think, because you can start visiting with people and maybe off camera they share some things with you about what their vision is and where they're going. And of course, when you do 100 or meet 100 or 200 people in the course of a couple days and have a lot of conversations in that space, you start to formulate some ideas about where we're going.
So, Marlo, let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, AI and robotics are everything, and are not everything, but there's a lot of things. And you look at Elon Musk. I think I just saw the other day that he has now hit 800 billion in net worth, and the idea that he's pivoting Tesla to more robotics as opposed to automobiles. And I'm not sure how accurate I got on all of that, but I did see the headline that he's 800 billion and on his way to a trillion. It only comes to innovation technology and world-changing type technologies that, in his case, he's come up with. What did you see there related to this stuff that is going to impact us?
Imagine for a second that you could get a device that would mow your yard and vacuum your carpets. Oh, that's right. We already have those. But you take that a little step further, right? And can cook for you, take your dog for a walk, be the security of your house when you're there or not there, remind you to take the pills that you need, and be a companion if you need to have a conversation about something. All of these things are going to be possible because of the combination of artificial intelligence and robotic. And Elon's betting everything on Optimus, which is his robot. And there's others that are out there as well. In fact, there's plenty of others that will be coming about. But all of what I just talked about, everything I just talked about, will probably cost in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000. And I think about, like, my mother, for example, and she lives alone in Des Lacs, and having a robot that could actually help her with all of these things and so much more would significantly lengthen the time that she could spend at home, for example, as opposed to going to some type of nursing home or assisted living or what have you. So I just think about that. And then I think about these jobs that we don't want to do or are harmful to us. I think about working around nuclear plants. We could really, there's just so much. There's so much. He expects that there will be 3 robots for every person on this planet, which is amazing when you think about that. But he's combining both that we will have personal assistants, that we will have a robot just like you and I have a car now, that this will be just part of who we are. And of course, in manufacturing, robotics will just take over everything. And that's
I think of how revolutionary the microwave was, and that shows how old I am. But I remember getting a microwave and thinking, I can cook this in a minute. I can. And Now we're talking about that someone's going to do the cooking for me, and I might have a gourmet meal. And maybe I can quit spending 10 hours on my lawnmower a week mowing my 10 acres I have to mow every week. And so now all of a sudden Gary's unemployed. No, I have 10 hours to do something productive that might be, or I might just decide I'm not going to do anything with that time. But it's time that we pick up, that we do some of the mundane things with it, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I know that if you listen to teenagers in the world, I'm bored. I don't think you and I have that problem, Gary. I have never in the last 5 decades been bored ever. I just can't imagine what that feels like because I have a lot of things that I like to do. Imagine getting back. I figured out mowing wise because I have an autonomous mower. I got 150 hours back of my time last summer. So that means what? That my wife and I can go to a ball game, we can go for a walk, we can sit down and watch a movie together. These are things that I have more of a chance to do now as opposed to, or maybe work on some other project or whatever. I love the fact that I get that time back. And I can't imagine what that will be like when we actually have full-blown robots in our homes. And the other thing that I think is interesting about a robot compared to, you brought the microwave, which I think is a fascinating analogy to where we're going here, right? We have a microwave for convenience, but that convenience isn't giving us maybe the best type of food to eat, right? Because we buy these pre-made meals that we drop in a microwave or whatever. And we do that because of convenience. We just do it because we don't have a lot of time to spend 2 hours every day cooking what would be considered a healthy meal, right? Imagine if that went away. If the robot actually could cook those healthy meals for you, so when you show up from work at 5:30 in the evening, you have that healthy meal ready to go. So it drives the cost down of food because you're not paying for the convenience of prepackaged things and you're eating better. So I think I'm just using that as one example of what's possible as we move forward.
I think of small little, I have lights on my ranch, and I change the color every night or every other day. I put my Christmas lights up. I don't call them Christmas lights anymore, but I put them up on Halloween and I take them down on Easter. And I change the colors based on what's going on. I do it for my phone wherever I'm at, turn them on. I can automate it, set the time, tie it to sunset. That's just a small piece of technology. And then I got a doorbell that we have out front that I can see who's at the door. I can talk to someone when they show up. Those are conveniences of things that we don't have to be fearful of. And they're just fun little things to do. And sometimes there's things related to better security and protection around things of that nature. And so I think of the conveniences, but also the fear that people have with AI or tools that allow you to do more automated stuff. What are some things you can do to alleviate some of that fear that people would have, Marlo? Because I just see all the potential and I see, yeah, there's some bad stuff. There's all kinds of bad stuff goes on if I did something in the microwave and put aluminum foil in, right? Or I could start a fire different ways. So you can do anything bad with anything good if you want to.
Yeah, I always start this conversation with, did you know that water kills? You think about this, something that's necessary for us, but of course it can also kill you. So I always start with that. There's always good and bad with everything. You just have to weigh out what that is. Some people like to mow the yard and they get upset because I tell them that I don't mow my yard anymore. And they're like, I love to mow my yard. I'm not saying that you have to stop mowing your yard. This is what I'm saying is that as we move forward, when you go to your local store to purchase your new mower, you're still going to have that push version. I noticed that those have come back a little bit too, where the hand powered rotary things that you push along. That's how we used to mow our yards. And of course, you have the motorized version, and you have both gas fueled and now you have electric versions of mowers as well. The electric versions have come along because that technology has become available to us. And now you have the choice of autonomous mowers. So it's just a choice. If you love to mow your yard, then please continue mowing your yard. I personally want, because I'm a busy person, I like having my time back. I don't like having to worry about having to rush home and spend 3 hours mowing my yard tonight. When I show up tonight, my yard is manicured with stripes and all these other things in there. So I like that convenience. And I think you just have to weigh that out. You shouldn't, I understand the fearfulness of this, but we've gone through this. We've gone through this with when we moved from horses to automobiles. By the way, it's less than 1 million hours since we rode horse as our main form of transportation. And I want you to think about that because this show will last an hour. We think nothing of an hour, but yet it's less than a million of them since we rode horses. So things are accelerating like crazy. And I'm betting that most of you would rather drive a car 200 miles than ride a horse.
So, Marlo, when you think of transportation, speaking of horses and transportation, where are we headed with that? I see these automobiles going up, and here in Phoenix, all these Google's got these Waymo cars all over the place driving around. I take pictures of them. I'm finally like, now they're just part of the background for me anymore. I ignore them anymore.
Yeah, that's changing quick. I was just in a Zeus in Las Vegas. That is basically two bench seats that are looking at each other. There's no steering wheel, no nothing on the app, just like you would do rideshare. You tell it where you want it to pick you up and where you want it to drop you off, and it just comes by and picks you up and drops you off. The way we move in transportation is changing right before our eyes, and we're moving to the air, Gary. So that's the other thing that's interesting.
Yeah, I would like to talk about that moving to the air because I think that's fascinating. It might change the direction, but I also see a potential of lots of collisions. But I guess AI will keep that from happening. Welcome back to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth, talking to Marlo Anderson, National Day Calendar and Tech Guru from Tech Ranch. Marlo, before the break, we were talking about transportation. And obviously, these Waymo cars driving all over Phoenix are doing fine. Accidents all the time of all kinds of vehicles with humans behind the car and the steering wheel. But if one of those unmanned cars has even a blip, we're going to see it in the headlines for weeks. But we don't see headlines with all the accidents that occur. Talk to me about, in your mind, how this impacts flying. Are cars flying, or by boat, that by car is going to become a boat and an airplane? I don't know. What's your vision of this?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of autonomous vehicles. I was probably the poster child for autonomous vehicles back from about 2010 to 2020 in the country. And I took up this cause because I just got tired of seeing my friends and family get injured and die on our roads. It's a significant problem. And autonomous vehicles, the numbers look like we're going to probably reduce collision accidents by 90 to 95%. And that is significant. So if you think about right now, we lose between 35,000 and 40,000 people a year on our roads in this country. If we drop that down to 1,000 or less, right? It goes right to the fact that you're talking about, Gary, where because it's so rare, it'll make big news. Where right now it's so common, most accidents get buried on page 4 or 5 or 10 of our newspapers and aren't even hardly mentioned. So I agree with you. I think that's where it's going. It'll be safer. It'll be more convenient. I was visiting with Corning, which is a glass company, and you wouldn't think that, although they make a lot of automotive glass, you wouldn't think that they'd be thinking about this, but they're more interested now in the experience in an autonomous vehicle. And what are you going to do with that windshield? Does that become a screen? Is that a way for Gary in the future? I could be driving down the road and you and I can have this conversation like we're having right now because I'm not driving the car and the windshield is my screen so I can see you. I see you right now coming from Phoenix and we can have this conversation, or I can have a great conversation with my mother or whatever, or I can sit back and watch a movie as I'm driving from Bismarck to Fargo. This is where we're going with this.
I just drove but not too many weeks ago from Bismarck all the way to Phoenix, and I made a long route and I spent a lot of windshield time. It was good thinking time. So that's the good part, is you have that downtime. But there are these accidents that occur that could be saved. And I have to say, since I've been here, my mobile has kept me out of at least 2 bumpers where I was going to back into somebody and it stopped. My brakes locked up on me and stopped me. I'm thinking, I didn't see that car there. So all the cameras and all these motion sensing detectors have changed so much, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is I don't know how else to combat with trying to think of the right term for this. When your eyes are off the road because you're texting, the texting feature and all the distracted driving, right? That has actually taken the place of drinking and driving as the number one cause of accidents in our country. And which is great that drinking and driving has dropped so much, but our accident levels actually gone up in the last decade, and that's because of distracted driving. Take that away. Just take it away, because our technology handles all of that now, and that makes everybody safer on the road. and it just becomes a much better place to live here in the United States.
So what you're telling me where we're headed, I can drive down the road and have a glass of wine. Now, I'm not very far away from you. I'm kidding. Anyway, so let's talk about vehicles that are going to be not have to be on roads, that are going to be lifted up and be fly. Where do you think we're headed with that?
Yeah, we are certainly moving towards flying cars, maybe not in the realm that you're thinking as far as wheels that fly off the ground. And basically, these are drones that are being adapted for that.
Part of what I'm thinking about, Marlo, and I look at the whole idea of what's happened. A lot of times we go back to the Jetsons. I grew up watching the cartoon The Jetsons, think of George Jetson, and I think of his robot maid and think of their vehicle and all the things that go on with the way the Jetsons functioned. And so many of those features on that Jetson cartoon is happening today, maybe not quite as advanced as we used to have it, but having that kind of thing going on. And to your point about the automobile, maybe the first stage automobiles are actually going down the road where the wheels come off and they're staying on a highway system, and we're still having directions, because there's got to be some kind of common direction where you're just not going to be having vehicles hitting any direction at any given time. And so the idea that having a UAV that has remote controls, or the cars they stop at the street lights that turn red, they go when they're green, and they make right turns and they stay in the streets. But when are those going to be flying where we can go from point A to point B and not be restricted and have more of a direct flight, as opposed to have like an airplane can go direct without having to be on the road? So there's things of that nature. And Marlo, the other thing I would have is, what about the speed at which those, when they're starting to get off the ground in direction with UAVs? County seats were there because it was the county seat, if I recall, were set up that how far could you get in a day so you could get to the county seat. That's the way the towns were designed, where the county seats were. But today, with direction and speed, that's going to be a major impact of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been in a couple flying vehicles, and actually that was 5 or 6 years ago already. And I was in what's called the E-Hang 184, and went up about 400 feet and then basically flew around in the desert outside of Las Vegas. And the technology has come a long ways already since then. And I was just looking this morning at, I forget the name of the company, but it's 250,000 for this particular vehicle, which I know is a lot. There are others that are less that are out there, but it has a range of 200 and some miles. It's a hybrid. So you actually run it on gasoline, so it makes electricity, and then it runs the 4 props that are on this thing. And that's why it's so expensive, because it's the range that you have with this. And you don't need to have a pilot's license because it's autonomous. It'll actually fly. You just tell it where you want to go, and it will take you to that location, which is amazing. So you can fly from town to town with that. The other ones that I've been in, like the E-Hang 184, their goal is in that $25,000 range. It's strictly electric. It only goes for 15 or 20 minutes, but it does fly up to 100 miles an hour. So if you're just going across from Mandan to Bismarck for work, for example, instead of dealing with all the traffic and spending 20 or 30 minutes, even though it's only 5 miles away, in this, you would just lift off from your backyard, land on the roof or wherever where you're headed to, and you're there in 3 or 5 minutes. So that's what's amazing.
Marlo, how far are we away from what you just described? They got it today, but if I wanted to buy one and start using it, knowing the city of Bismarck would say, what's this guy flying around Bismarck in this little vehicle for? Where are we at between regulations and the technology converging?
So the technology is obviously, I think, a little further along than what our regulations allow. I know that there are some states, I believe Idaho has allowed some limited use of these vehicles. I have to think that maybe North Dakota isn't going to be much further behind, but that's not I'm putting some pressure on the state here. I would love to see that. We have some other things with drones in the state that are allowed that aren't allowed in other parts of the country. So I think this would be one of those logical steps. Dubai, for example, has air taxi service through town using what I was talking about with the E-Hang 184. And they have pads that they have set up around the city. And you just go up to that pad, and then it takes you across the city to another location in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. So that's the type of thing that I see starting I also see, oh, I forget what airport it is, but there's an airport, and I believe they're partnering with Delta, this particular company, and it's a similar thing where you actually go to a drop-off point 4 or 5 miles away from the airport, and then it airlifts you to the airport. So you don't have to deal with the congestion around. Think of LA, for example. You can spend 2 hours and only get 2 miles around LAX right now because of the traffic congestion. So you would eliminate all of that simply by using these flying vehicles.
Marlo, in the last minute and a half here, give us a couple of little of teasers of what we're going to be having in future shows that you're going to bring to us from Las Vegas and CES.
Probably a couple of things. Robotic pets, they have come a long ways in the last year. Unbelievable. We'll be talking about that. You're also going to be seeing a lot about robotics and artificial intelligence in your kitchen. And you're going to love some of the things that are going on for the ability for us to make fresh food right at home.
I think I'm a bird lover and I'm a gardener. And one of the things he showed last year was the bird device that you can have out there. And I have an app that I can say, oh, I wonder what that bird is. And so I'll listen to it and it'll go out there and say, this is the bird, what it looks like. But the idea of having just small little fun entertainment things, of having the camera out on your birdhouse and taking pictures of the birds up close and seeing what they're eating, those are little fun little technology, and they're pretty inexpensive, aren't they?
They are, and you'll be seeing a lot of those in the report that I did.
Okay. We're looking forward to it. So we've been talking to Marlo Anderson of Tech Guru, and he just came back from Las Vegas at the CES conference. And we're going to be airing a bunch of those in future shows like we did last year, 8 to 12-minute segments. Marlo, thank you for joining us today in Open Range. And then need to have you back again